Ji Ki Fateh. Oh, that's so awkward, it broke. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with local Sangat, and I'm very happy to be bringing Phulkari, possibly for the first time in a space like this, so it's an honor. So basically, as Gurpreet Singh introduced it, tonight my talk is going to be a mixture of storytelling and spoken word, and I'm going to be taking you through Phulkari. So how this is going to work is I'm just going to talk a lot, and I'm going to read poems, and if you guys have read the book or want to buy the book, I'm going to be giving page numbers for reference as well. Page 6. There are no poems, no words heavy enough to break what is inside me. I am 2 parts too much and 1 part not enough, unbalanced. Determined to break down your walls while it's putting up my own, getting to the root of my trauma, staying there, getting lost there, forgetting to come back up for air. I am resilient, but I am not. Hardened by the same thing that softens me, weakened by the very thing that empowers me. I am a tangle of contradictions, a mess of mistakes. Masking love with anger, mistaking anger for love, I am powerful in the same breath that I am not. Breaking promises with the same sureness that I make them. Breaking people, loving people. Do I need to break myself to love? I am 2 parts too much and 1 part not enough. Unbalanced, human. So, just probably going off of what Giranjot Banji put so eloquently, this idea of self-doubt, this concept of anxiety, which I think a lot of us still haven't been able to wrap our minds around. This idea of, everything is going great in my life, I have so much to be grateful for, but I'm still feeling this way. And I feel like this is something that every single person sitting in this crowd has dealt with. Whether we like to admit it or not, whether we recognize it or not, it is something that happens to everyone. And the reason that I say that is because it needs to be normalized. So for me as a writer, writing is how I cope. Writing is where I go to vent out all my emotions, and when I'm feeling like this is when I actually write the best. But I think once we acknowledge that something is wrong, once we acknowledge that, I might be broken or there might be something going on that's not normal, for me, I believe that I need to make the active step to fix myself. And that looks differently for everybody. Some people are able to recognize that something is wrong and they are able to take those steps to fix themselves. But other people, especially people who don't have access to resources, people who don't have education, don't recognize that they're broken for their whole lives. So for me, how I cope is through writing. But I also seek empowerment from who I am. And what that means, who I am, how I identify myself is as a Punjabi Sikh woman. And that is basically at the core of what I write about, what I think about, what I speak about. And it's simply because if I wasn't who I was, I don't think I would be able to move forward from difficult times in my life. So what I want to start with first is Sikhi. Sikhi has been one of the biggest, most important parts of my life since I was a little kid. And there's so much about it that I didn't understand when I was younger. There was Bani that I didn't understand what it meant while I was reading it. There was stories, sakhis of shahadas that I didn't fully wrap my mind around until I got older. And I think that's what it is. I think that when we're younger, when we're innocent, we appreciate Sikhi. And I feel like we have this phase in between where we don't even know how we feel about it anymore. But for me, when I go through hard and difficult times, I am always brought back to Sikhi. And I think the general gist seems to be everywhere is that love is supposed to hold you together, that love is supposed to fix things that are broken. But what does love mean? And I've tried to wrap my mind around what it means. What does love mean? Because so many people have different definitions, so many people have different ideas. So how can I know which definition of love is right? So what I had to do was I had to look at love, this idea of love that is so elusive, so vague, and I had to look at it through the lens of Sikhi. I had to look at it through the lens of my guru. And what that means, and it's just not limited to Bani, because Bani is full of love. But I also had to look at it through real life examples. And what I mean by real life examples is the Sakhis, the Shahidis. And I was reflecting on this idea of love actually 2 years ago, exactly on Valentine's Day. I was thinking about what love means, and this is my answer. Page 36. If he asks for your love, remind him that you had to learn how to live and breathe a love that understands you are a sovereign being. The kind of love that has the courage to let you decide, the way Guru Gobind Singh gave Ajit Singh his blessings to walk into the arms of death. Tell him, there is a love that embraces you without wishing to conquer or suffocate. One that has the forgiveness to Tera Bedava right before your eyes. A love that cannot help but see the divine in every living being like Paikanayaji. A love that is not passive. A revolutionary love. When he offers you his love, make him remember the word shahadat. Remind him that there have been more sacrifices made than the strands of hair on his head, more blood given than that which flows through his veins, and this is the only love you have known since you took your first breath. A love that has been there before you and him even existed, and will continue living when you are gone. So when he asks for your love, tell him of the love of the Gurus, of the Char Sahibzade, of Bibi Pani and Mata Gujri Ji. Recount the Sakhis of Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana Ji, and then ask him if he will learn. So, like I mentioned before, this idea of love and what it looks like through a Gursikhi lens was very important for me in navigating the world. But there are so many different aspects of Sikhi where I seek empowerment from, and one of the biggest ones would be my last name, Kaur. Many people, we here in the West, we have adopted Singh and Kaur as our middle names. And my mom even tells me there was a time when people never even used to use their last name, but when people started immigrating, they made it mandatory to have a last name. But Guru Gobind Singh Ji intended Singh and Kaur to be our last names. And what most people don't realize is that last names carry lots of weight, and the weight that they carry is caste. I've had random aunties come up to me and ask me what my last name is. And I'm starting to realize it more and more that when a Punjabi person wants to know what your last name is, it's because they want to judge you. They want to judge where you're from, and they want to know what caste you are. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji giving me the name God frees me from every single system of oppression in the world, frees me from systems of race, systems of class, and sexism, which unfortunately still exists within our community. So when I say that my last name is Kaur, and that I'm proud to be a Kaur, what I mean on page 40 is that Kaur is liberation from the systems and hierarchies of the world, a declaration that you and I are one, I am not above you or beneath you. I stand beside you. So if you know of the name I carry, leave all of your misconceptions where I left mine, at the feet of my Guru, every time I fell. So going back to this idea of empowerment through Sikhi, I think we like to paint Sikhi as this forever Chardi Kala entity, and I don't think that's true. There will be times when reading Bani will not help. And I think that there has been this narrative that's been imbued within our community, especially when it comes to mental health, that if you are feeling a certain way, you're not doing enough thought. You're not doing ardas correctly. You need to get so-and-so Baba to do ardas for you. And I don't think that's fair. Because we are Sikhs. We are not the Guru. We are not supposed to be perfect. Only the Guru is perfect. So we should be allowed to break. So I wrote myself a consolation. Page 53. If you feel empty because they have left you, it's okay. Sometimes we become their habits and they realize that too late. Other times, they become ours. When the void they leave behind becomes unbearable, let yourself break completely. Put yourself together with Bani. There is no glue stronger than that. Fill yourself with the realization that this human life is temporary, and so are the people we come to love. Remember that it is important to love people, but that does not mean they own you. It also means that you do not own them, so when they leave because they need to, you have to let them go. Finally, surrender yourself to your Guru, who has been there before they arrived and will remain after they leave, and you will never have to fear love again. So another part of my identity that I feel empowers me is being a Punjabi woman. I remember when I was younger, my parents actually started me off into Punjabi school at the age of 5. I started kindergarten at the same time that I was learning Punjabi, and I remember back in the days like not enjoying it, but when I look back, I feel like that was the best thing that they could have ever done for me, is make sure that I knew how to read and write and speak Punjabi. So in the beginning of chapter 3 in Phulkari, which just delves into my Punjabi identity, I've written a little introduction. It's called From Punjab to Unceded Land. For my children, I will practice what my mother breathed into me. She reminded me that my elders left a land of 5 rivers and brought the name outsider to this new land, and I must honor this. She said, if living here makes you take an axe to your roots and strip away at your identity until your motherland does not recognize her own child, remember that you will have become an outsider everywhere. I hold on to her words. The same way she weaved this into me like thread and needle, I vow to teach my children of the people of the unceded land on which they reside. They will learn to honor them too. So this was just a tribute to the indigenous people, as Bhavanjit Kaur beautifully made the acknowledgement on whose land we reside and benefit from. And I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I felt that I cannot talk about land, I cannot talk about Punjab and the atrocities that happen to Sikhs and other minorities in Punjab while ignoring the atrocities that happen to indigenous people. And I think that's something that we as Sikhs and through our Sikhi activism need to be very conscious of. So one of the things I think that people who are born here really struggle with is immigrant parents. When we're younger, I think we tend to get out of it when we're older. But I mean, I have been working in customer service for a long time, and I've seen the way that teenage children, teenage boys, teenage girls react to their parents speaking English. And that always hurts. And I always see the way that white people or people who are able to speak English without an accent will react to people who have accents. So page 63, I kind of delved into this as well. My father's accent is enough to make you wrinkle your nose in disgust. But you have never had to balance a second language on your tongue. And even if you think you could, remember that my mother tongue makes sounds that leave English at a loss for letters. And one story that I want to leave you guys with is a story that I feel Surrey and Abbotsford are all too familiar with, and it's sad that we are familiar with this story, but gang violence is something that plagues our community, whether we like to talk about it or not. And this is a problem that I feel that will keep on going if we don't change the way that we raise our boys, the way that we interact with them, the way that we tell them how to feel and how not to feel. So I don't want to go too much into it because I feel like I'm running out of time here, but I just wanted to share a piece with you, page 72. Before I get into it, I want to talk about how we refer to one another. When we see somebody that we don't know, whether it's on TV, whether it's in a crowd, but they're Punjabi, we refer to them as apne. And what does apne literally translate to? Apne translates to our own. So when we see somebody, we might not know them, but we're still calling them our own. And I've delved into this concept in this piece. An 18-year-old boy is referred to as a man in the headlines. The body has not been identified yet, but gang violence is a common occurrence in the city of Abbotsford. The newspapers always present opinions filled with stories of immigrant parents who spoil their sons. No mention is made of the violence that goes on inside the four walls of Punjabi households. The silencing, the abuse, no mention of the immigrant struggle. The late night shifts, the presentation of toxic masculinity, no cultural context whatsoever. My mother tells me about the shooting as soon as I walk in through the door. I tell her I already know. She asks me if I know who died. I tell her I probably do. You see, I do not know if the victim is a Punjabi boy yet, but white comments under Facebook articles seem to know already. And while they make demands for deportations of gangsters who are born and raised in Canada, my heart sinks as a name is released. I recognize it. A face comes to mind as soon as I hear it. And so we grieve for the mother of the boy, for the family, for the community, and for ourselves. The boy was an apna. He was our own, after all. So I'm just going to end off with what is actually the last poem in my book. And it was a poem that I didn't even put into a chapter. It's just called An Afterthought. And before I read this poem, I want to talk about how we in our community talk about death. So when I was younger, and I've talked to lots of people about this too, seeing Punjabi people be really weird about the color black, and seeing women whose husbands have died at a young age and them not being allowed to wear bright colors for a certain amount of period, it just baffled me as a kid. So I think about that a lot, and I think about my dear brother Harman Kaur, who actually passed away a year ago, and at his funeral everybody came wearing royal blue. And one of my friends, Manveer Singh, he's actually sitting in the crowd today, I remember him remarking and saying that it didn't feel like a funeral, it felt like a wedding. And I also think about how when somebody passes away, we say, "Oh, pure ho gaye." And when that literally translates to they have become complete. And then I think about how Guru Gobind Singh Ji celebrated the Shahidi of Baba Ajit Singh with a jagara that was said to crack the sky in half. And then I think back to that poor woman whose husband has passed away and she's not allowed to wear bright colors. So I'm just going to end off page 149, an afterthought. Death is not the color black, nor is it white. Death is the nila my people wear with pride, the beautiful browns of our eyes and skin, a declaration that we carry the sun with us wherever we go. The gayety we proudly raise against a light blue sky, death is yellows and blues and greens. The silver glints of our garbans and garas, death is lal and gulabi and jamani. The flash of color I will see before I close these eyes forever. To have lived such a colorful life is not something I will allow to be mourned in blacks and whites. It will be celebrated in a rainbow of Phulkaris. Thank you.